The Holy Gospel according to Mark. Glory to you, O Lord. Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "John the Baptist, and others Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." He asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" And Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah." And he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all this quite openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any wish to come after me, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. The stage is set, and the debate is ready to begin. Each party has taken their place at the podium, ready to defend their platform, and the moderator asks the first question, a bit of a curveball. Who do people say that I am? The disciples, in turn, offer their various popular responses. John the Baptist, Elijah, one of the other prophets, each vying for their own particular interpretation of what they've heard, of who they want Jesus to be. But, turning to the last of them, the moderator presses, "Who do you say that I am?" "You are the Messiah." No sooner does the answer leave Peter's lips than he is confronted by the reality of what he has just said. This Messiah must undergo great suffering, be rejected, and be killed. Now maybe Peter and his disciples expected a Make Israel Great Again campaign. Jesus is the Messiah, the anointed one, the long-promised deliverer who would save God's people and crush their oppressors and political enemies, to dominate and emerge victorious, and to restore Israel's status and prestige. Except that's not what Jesus has in mind. It's hardly a coincidence that Jesus brings this up now, of all places, on the way to Caesarea Philippi, a Roman colony near a temple dedicated to Rome and its emperor. You know who else liked to use titles like Anointed One for himself? The emperor. Against this imperial geographic backdrop, Jesus teases out questions about his identity. Yes, he is the Messiah, the anointed one, the deliverer, but not in the way that his disciples have come to expect. This Messiah will not dominate and conquer by military might or violent insurrection, nor by self-centered and self-serving power that seeks to preserve itself at all costs, like Caesar. No. This Messiah will lead a revolution, but it will be a revolution of love and mercy, of service and justice. A revolution marked by doing the very things that he has been doing up to this point that have attracted so much attention, positive and negative. Healing people and feeding them, delivering them from pain and isolation, welcoming those who have been outcast, and offering them a place of belonging and dignity at the table. This revolution is a direct affront to the empire that seeks to dominate and control, precisely because this revolution offers life, mercy, and liberation. This is the kind of Messiah that Jesus is, not the self-serving, self-preserving Caesar, but a self-emptying servant. This is the kind of life that Jesus calls his disciples and the crowds to. Deny yourself. Take up your cross. Follow me. Now, because the Bible has far too often been used in harmful ways, I also want to be perfectly clear now about what Jesus is not saying. This invitation to take up our cross is absolutely not a justification for enduring abuse, illness, or injustice. Oh, that's just my cross to bear. It is also not to suggest that suffering of any kind is divinely sanctioned or that there is redemption in suffering. Far too often, preachers have wielded such a message from their pulpits, and I want to be perfectly clear that is spiritual abuse, and it has no place in the message of Jesus. Instead, when Jesus calls his disciples and the crowds to deny themselves, take up their cross and follow him, it is a powerful and subversive invitation to renounce the self-centered and self-serving nature of the empire, to give up all ambitions for power and domination and control, and to instead choose the way of God, the way of the gospel, the way of mercy, love, and justice. It is so radically different from anything the disciples have come to expect, so different from what they've heard, so different from who they want Jesus to be, so different from the way of empire and might makes right. And yet there is a tinge of something eerily familiar here. This way is risky. This way might even lead to the cross, language which would have been crystal clear in a political climate that used the threat of violence and death to silence its enemies. As the late Black liberation theologian James Cone has said, and as I have often quoted before, if you are going to worship somebody that was nailed to a tree, you must know that the life of a disciple of that person is not going to be easy. To commit ourselves to the way of Jesus, the way of mercy, love, and justice, is not always going to be easy or comfortable. If you prefer easy and comfortable, Jesus says, turn back now. This isn't for you. But if you want a way that offers something radically different and hopeful, deny yourself. Take up your cross and follow me. Jesus invites us to let down our guard, to unclench our fists, and to be opened to a way of living love for the sake of our neighbors in need and for the sake of a hurting world. The church is not called to make itself great, but to empty itself, to offer itself for others as Christ offers himself for us, beckoning us into a new way. Follow me. Follow me into the beautiful moments of healing and feeding and liberating. Follow me when the path gets rocky and you lose your footing. Follow me when the message of love and inclusion is mocked and ridiculed. Follow me into resurrection and new life on the other side. Who do you say that this Jesus is? This Jesus is the Messiah, who suffers as we suffer, who is rejected as we are rejected, who has been where we are and promises we are not alone. A Messiah who has been raised and who raises us to new life. And that, dear church, is not up for debate.